Hello, welcome dear students. I welcome you all in this science lecture. In our previous lecture, we have seen a brief introduction about cell and its discovery, the research of various scientists in the field of biology. Okay, and the subject is cell. Cell is a basically Latin word which means a small room. Okay, then after in today's lecture we are going to discuss what is a cell made up of, and the second thing, what is the structural organization of a cell, how the cell is structurally organized. Okay, what are its organelles matlab subcomponents of the cell. So let us start the lecture. We show above that the cell has special components called organelles. How is a cell organized? If we study a cell under a microscope, we would come across three features in almost every cell. Plasma membrane, nucleus and cytoplasm. So primarily there are three cell organelles named as plasma membrane, nucleus, the monitoring center of the wall cell, and third is cytoplasm. So basically there are three cell organelles which is present inside the cell. Okay, all activities inside the cell and interaction of the cell with its environment are possible due to these features. Let us see how. So all the activities which is carried out by the cell is organized and monitored by these three cell organelles primarily. So let us discuss about the first cell organelle named as plasma membrane or cell membrane. Let us start. Plasma membrane. This is the outermost covering of the cell that separates the contents of the cell from its external environment. Means if we consider a one cell structure like this. Okay, so this covering layer that separate the contents of the cell from its external environment, यानी के the content which is present inside the cell is separated by this thin membrane. Membrane मतलब one kind of surface which separate the two things. Okay, so one kind of surface or a membrane which separates the content of the cell from its external environment, it is called plasma membrane. The plasma membrane allows or permits the entry and exit of some materials in and out of the cell. It allows or permit means certain kind of objects or certain kind of materials are permitted to enter inside the cell or exit from the cell. It also prevents movement of some other materials. So it does not only allow and permit the materials, but it is also preventing some kind of materials. The cell membrane therefore is called a selectively permeable membrane. So while in the exercise or in the examination, one question might ask to you that why the cell membrane is called as selectively permeable membrane. So because of this characteristics of cell membrane, it is called as selectively permeable membrane, because it does not only allow and permit the other materials to enter or exit the cell, but it also prevent the movement of some other materials, okay, within inside the cell. Therefore it is called as selectively permeable membrane. Please tick mark these sentences in your textbook, starting from here and end at here. Okay, Next, how does the movement of substances takes place into the cell? How do substances move out of the cell? So there is one logical question arise in our mind, that how the substances are moving from the cell or within the cell or outside the cell. That how can any substance enter into the cell, or how can any substance can leave the cell? How it will takes place? Is there any force? Is there any kind of pushing object is there within the cell, or is there any external object is there which will cause the entry or exit of the cell? Let us know. Some substances like carbon dioxide or oxygen can move across the cell membrane by a process called diffusion. As we already studied in this unit number 1, matter in our surrounding, what is the term diffusion means? Okay, diffusion means the conversion of a solid, any state of matter into the another state is called diffusion. We have studied, starting from here, moving forward, we have studied the process of diffusion in earlier chapters. We saw that there is a spontaneous movement of substances from a region of higher concentration to a region where its concentration is low. So, what is the exact meaning of this sentence? That if you have one bucket here and it is connected with the external environment, means that here this is the external environment. So if I will take one bucket, okay, and at here the water is filled, and in external environment there is a less amount of water is available. So if I allow the water which is contained inside the cell to flow outside, in which direction the water will flow? Water will flow from inside to outside of the vessel. Why? Because large amount of water is filled inside the vessel and less amount of water is present outside the vessel. So the water will flow from higher contained water region to lower contained water region. It is simple logic, that in which direction the water will flow? Water will flow from high contained water region to the lower contained water region. If I will fill, sorry, it is not ready, okay, don't worry. If I will fill this tank with water and I also fill water in the external environment of that vessel, now what will happen? Water will not move or flow from inside of the vessel to the outside of the vessel. It cannot flow because of the higher concentration and lower concentration. The substance will flow. Same thing will happen to the cell. This is a one cell structure. If I will tell you, this is a one cell structure which is containing more amount of CO2, matlab carbon dioxide, and there is a high amount of carbon dioxide are present within the cell and lower amount of carbon dioxide present outside the cell. So could you tell me that the carbon dioxide will move from which direction to which direction? Simple. From the higher contained region of carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide will move from higher concentration to lower concentration. Matlab, the carbon dioxide will flow from cell to the external environment, because there is a higher concentration of carbon dioxide is inside the cell and lower concentration of carbon dioxide is outside the cell. So where the concentration is low, at that place the substance will start to flow. Something similar to this happens in cell. See here. Something similar to this happen in cells. When, for example, some substances like CO2, which is cellular waste and requires to be excreted out by the cell, means CO2 is a one kind of waste and it needs to be excreted, मतलब इसे बाहर निकाल देना चाहिए. Accumulates in higher concentration inside the cell, means the higher accumulation of the CO2 is inside the cell. In the cell's external environment, the concentration of CO2 is low as compared to that inside the cell. Means there is a higher concentration of CO2 inside the cell and lower concentration of CO2 outside the cell. So the carbon dioxide will excreted out within the cell. As soon as there is a difference of concentration of CO2 inside and outside a cell, CO2 moves out of the cell from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration outside the cell by the process of diffusion. So this is the one simple process of diffusion in which the flowing of the substances takes place from higher region, higher concentration to lower concentration. Similarly, O2 enters the cell by the process of diffusion when the level of or concentration of O2 inside the cell decreases. Means if there is a less amount of oxygen is present inside the cell and more amount of oxygen present outside the cell, then the oxygen will flow from external environment to the cell. Okay? So in this way the diffusion process takes place. I hope that you understand it very well. Moving forward from this line. Thus, diffusion plays an important role in gaseous exchange between the cells as well as the cell and its external environment. So the diffusion process only helps to gaseous exchange. But we know that the cell contains liquid as well as gaseous content, or at some extent the solid particles are also there. So for the gaseous exchange there is a diffusion process plays an important role. Now let us move to the liquid substances. Water also obey the law of diffusion. The movement of water molecules through such a selectively permeable membrane is called osmosis. Means the exchange of gases from external environment to the cell is called diffusion, and the exchange of water from external environment to the cell is called osmosis. The movement of water across the plasma membrane is also affected by the amount of substance dissolved in water. Thus, osmosis is the passage of water from a region of higher water concentration through a selectively permeable membrane to a region of lower concentration till equilibrium is reached. Means if any cell has a lower amount of water inside the cell and there is a higher concentration of water outside the cell, so it is clear that the water will flow from external environment to inside of the cell. So this process of exchange of liquid substance into the cell is called osmosis, in which the higher concentration water region will flow towards the lower concentration water region. Okay? What will happen if we put an animal cell or a plant cell into the solution of sugar or salt in water? One of the following three things could happen. So if we put a plant cell or an animal cell into a solution of sugar or salt in water, if we put a sugar or salt inside the water and then we put a plant or animal cell inside the water, what will happen? Let us study. Three observations are there. The first one is, let us understand. If the medium surrounding the cell has a higher water concentration than the cell, meaning that the outside solution is very dilute, the cell will gain water by osmosis. Such a solution is known as hypotonic solution. What is the way to understand this topic? Let us do by this figure. If I will tell you this is a one cell. say it is an animal cell. The surrounding means the external environment is having a higher concentration of water, H2O. Okay, and lower concentration of water inside the cell. So what will happen? The cell will gain the water through the osmosis process. So such a solution which is having a higher concentration of water outside the cell is called as hypotonic solution. Please tick mark this whole paragraph. Moving forward, water molecules are free to pass across the cell membrane in both directions. So there is a, if I will tell you that there is a both kind of exchange will takes place from the the exit of water is also takes place and the entry of water will also takes place from and to the cell. But more water will come into the cell than will leave. Matlab, if the more amount of water will gain by the cell, then the remaining amount of water will leave by the cell. If the enough amount of water is gained by the cell, then the excess amount of water which is present inside the cell will excreted out. It is the meaning of this sentence. The net result is that water enters the cell is likely to swell up. Means if shell is shrink because less amount of H2O is available and the concentration of the water is higher into the external environment. So what will happen through the osmosis process? The cell will swell up. Means before osmosis process the cell size is this, but after the osmosis process the cell swell up. Means the size of cell is increased. Swell up means increased. Okay, chalo. Next, if the medium has exactly the same water concentration as the cell, what will be the next situation? If the medium has exactly the same water concentration as the cell, means what are they trying to tell? The H2O amount is 50%. Wait a second. The meaning of the sentence is there is a 50% H2O, matlab water is available inside the cell, and there is also 50% water is available outside environment. So the concentration on both the side, inside the cell and outside the cell, are same. So at that time such type of solution is called isotonic solution. Why it is isotonic? Because there is a no net movement of water across the cell membrane. Means water will not enter into the cell or it cannot exit from the cell. Okay, chaliye. Water crosses the cell membrane in both directions, but the amount going in is the same as the amount of going out. So there is a no overall movement of water. The cell will stay the same size. So what this paragraph trying to tell, that there is a no movement of water from the cell or to the cell. So there is a no gain or no decrement in the size of the cell. Okay, chaliye. Please tick mark this whole paragraph. It is the definition of isotonic solution. Okay. Third, if the medium has a lower concentration of water than the cell, means here it is a 60% of water is available inside the cell, and here only 20% of water is available outside the cell. Okay. So now can you tell me that in which direction the water will move? Absolutely, the water will move from this cell to the external environment. It is very simple. As I already told you that the water will move from higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay, I have already told you in this first example that where the water is available in the higher amount, it will flow from the higher water amount to the lower water amount. Okay, chaliye. So what will happen? Meaning that it is a very concentrated solution. the cell will lose water by osmosis. So same process will happen. The water will flow from the cell to the external environment. Such type of solution is known as hypertonic solution. So what is the meaning of hypertonic solution? The solution in which the cell contains the higher amount of water and the external environment contains less amount of water. That kind of solution is called as hypertonic solution. So could you tell me what will happen to the cell size? In a first example or first observation, I already told you that when the concentration is low within the cell will swell up, means the size of cell will increase. But here what will happen? The cell is already swelled up and it will give off the water to the external environment. So here what will happen? The cell will shrink, means the size of cell will decrease after the osmosis process. Okay, so this is happening to the animal cell when we put it into the solution of sugar or salt water solution. Okay, so these are the three observations in which you can understand the two processes. First is a osmosis process in which the hypotonic solution is there. Second is also a osmosis process but the solution type is changed, isotonic solution. Third is a also osmosis process but the solution is hypertonic solution. There are three different type of cases according to the water concentration level. Okay, so these are the activities that you don't need to do. Okay, moving to the next paragraph at here. What it is trying to tell? Unicellular freshwater organisms. Unicellular means the organisms which is having only one cell as their body part. Most plant cells tend to gain water through the osmosis. See, when the gaseous exchange takes place, that process is called as diffusion. But when the liquid or a water transport takes place, that process is called as osmosis. Okay, most plant cells tend to gain water through osmosis. Absorption of water by plant roots is also an example of osmosis. By the roots of the plant there is a water absorption is there. It is also called osmosis. Thus, diffusion is important in exchange of gases and water in the life of a cell. In addition to this, the cell also obtains nutrition from its environment. Different molecules move in and out of the cell through a type of transport requiring use of energy. Means the cell of animal and plant can take in or take out any kind of material through this two process. First is diffusion, second one is osmosis. The plasma membrane is a flexible and is made up of organic molecules called lipids and proteins. So the plasma membrane, which is a outer covering, it is nothing but it is a outer covering, one kind of outside surface which is made up of lipids and proteins. However, we can observe the structure of the plasma membrane only through an electron microscope. So, through our naked eye, it is not visible, but we need an electron microscope to see the plasma membrane. The flexibility of the cell membrane also enables the cell to engulf in food and other materials from its external environment. Engulf, it means to take in the food, means it is a solid substances. So cell also can able to take in the solid particles through the plasma membrane. What are the examples? Such processes are known as endocytosis. Means if the solid particles are enter or exit from the cell, that process is known as endocytosis. Okay? Amoeba acquires its food through such processes. Amoeba is a single cellular organism which can take in the food with its two jaws. Okay, and that process is called as endocytosis. So at here we are ending the topic plasma membrane. So in the plasma membrane you have to remember how the diffusion and the osmosis process takes place and what are the types of solution inside the osmosis process, okay, and how the plasma membrane is constructed. These are the most important topic that you can learn from this lecture, okay. So thank you all my dear students. We will meet in our next lecture. Till that time, stay home, stay safe.